Isn't it amazing? This is the result, Nigel. You and I have never had it. It's called religious conversion. The Harry we have now is not the Harry we had then. This is not the Harry of the Invictus Games.
Military psychologists have a term for it: survivor's displacement. It happens when soldiers return from war, unable to reconcile who they were with who they've become. Prince Harry's transformation from Afghanistan veteran to Hollywood exile isn't just another royal scandal. It's a textbook case of how trauma, privilege, and identity collision create the perfect storm for self-destruction.
Harry, does he actually know what Invictus means? Invictus means undefeated, not a victim. What he did with those soldiers, shot up.
The numbers tell a brutal story. In 2013, Harry's approval rating stood at 77%. By 2025, it's crashed to 23%. That's not media manipulation. That's systematic self-sabotage playing out on a global stage. Clinical psychologists who study public figures note a pattern. The higher the pedestal, the more spectacular the methods of jumping off it.
A religious conversion. Every value that this man believed in before is stood on its head. He has betrayed his entire past, and what we have now, we've got two Harrys. It is very...
What we're witnessing isn't unique to royalty. It's human psychology at its most raw. A man who once commanded Apache helicopters now commands only controversy. The soldier who protected his unit in Afghanistan now attacks his own family in print. This isn't contradiction. It's textbook trauma response mixed with something far more complex. The burden of being the spare in a system that demands you matter less than your sibling by birthright.
Courage not to be victims.
Fantastic.
To go to the gym, to do something, to take control of their lives, to do what you did after a plane crash. What has he done now? He's been persuaded of the doctrine of woke.
Dr. David Starkey called it religious conversion, this complete reversal of values. But psychologists see something different. They see a man who never processed his mother's death properly, thrown into combat zones, then expected to smile for cameras. The Invictus Games founder who inspired wounded warriors now embodies the very victimhood he once helped soldiers overcome. That's not hypocrisy. That's psychological fracturing.
Shakespeare's Prince Hal abandons his bad side for his good. He's abandoned his good side for this new bad, whinging, wailing, destructive. Do you know what? I think we need a stronger word that you've been using.
The timeline reveals the cracks forming years before Montecito. In 2016, Harry issued that unprecedented statement defending his then-girlfriend from press intrusion. Palace insiders called it emotional. Psychologists called it the first public break in his emotional regulation. The man trained to never show weakness suddenly couldn't stop showing it. Every interview since has been a masterclass in what therapists call emotional flooding, when feelings override judgment.
This man is a traitor to everything that he has believed in, to his family, to the monarchy, to the country, to his grandmother, to his father.
Consider the Vegas incident, the Nazi costume, the naked billiards photos. Media called them scandals. Behavioral scientists see cries for help. Each incident pushed boundaries further, testing how much the system would tolerate. Classic self-destructive pattern. Push until something breaks, then blame the break on those who didn't stop you. It's not conscious, it's compulsive.
It's a gospel which is purely of the self. It discards every other obligation.
Duty, service, all these concepts are gone.
All the things that were so exemplified by the late Queen, and instead you have this...
The memoir Spare wasn't literature. It was 416 pages of what psychologists recognize as trauma dumping, the compulsive need to externalize pain without processing it. Killing 25 Taliban fighters gets equal weight with arguments over bridesmaids' dresses. That's not poor editing. That's emotional dysregulation where the brain can't properly scale threats anymore. Everything feels equally catastrophic because internally, everything is.
Look at it. We had a dispute about a tiara, a bridesmaid's dress. Do you know what? My bedroom was smaller than my brother's. Look at this list of absolute trivia, which is, on the scale of human wrong.
Tom Bauer sees calculation. Angela Levin sees transformation. Lady Colin Campbell sees character flaws. They're all right and all wrong. What they're witnessing is something psychologists call identity diffusion, when someone loses their core sense of self and desperately tries on new identities hoping one fits. The soldier didn't work, the prince didn't work, the humanitarian didn't work, so now he's trying victim. It never works.
Barely specks of dust. And they're not transformed into mountains. They're transformed into mountain ranges, Himalayas, lunar structures. I mean, the sheer, finally, silliness.
The California move was an escape. It was geographic therapy. The false belief that changing location changes psychology. Therapists see it constantly. Clients who believe new cities equal new selves, but trauma has GPS. It finds you in Montecito as easily as London. The accent changes, the address changes, the pain remains identical, just with better weather and worse publicity.
Whatsoever. I think we've directed much of our ire at Meghan over the course of the last couple of years. I think he really is the problem. It's he that's betrayed his family.
Here's what makes Harry's case study fascinating for psychologists. He's simultaneously oversharing and withholding. He'll tell you about frostbitten body parts but won't examine why he needs to tell you. He'll count his Taliban kills but won't question why he's counting. This selective vulnerability isn't honesty, it's performance. The real pain stays buried under shocking revelations that distract from deeper wounds.
Robust times, it wouldn't have been knocked into a dog bowl. It would have been drowned in a butt of Malmsey wine. Which is, but again, if you look at the House of York, it's exactly the same thing. It's a dispute between brothers. Yeah. And again, what's come out of all of
the Oprah interview broke viewership records and psychological boundaries simultaneously. Trained therapists watched a man drowning in real time while thinking he was swimming. Every accusation against his family was really an accusation against himself. They didn't protect us means I couldn't protect myself. They were jealous means I'm jealous. It's projection so transparent that first-year psychology students could diagnose it. TIA military trauma compounds this. Soldiers are trained to identify enemies and neutralize threats. But what happens when the enemy is your own psychology? You can't call in air support for self-hatred. You can't coordinate an extraction from your own memories. So you do what soldiers do. You fight. Except now you're fighting your father, your brother, your grandmother's legacy. You're using military tactics against family dinners. The public watches this collapse with the fascination usually reserved for true crime documentaries. But this isn't entertainment. It's a humanitarian crisis playing out in designer clothes. A man who once found purpose in service now finds purpose in grievance. The same determination that got him through Sandhurst now fuels his self-destruction. It's the same energy, just inverted. What nobody discusses is the role of validation addiction. Social media turned everyone into approval junkies. But imagine being born into ultimate validation, literal royalty, then having it threatened. The psychological whiplash would break anyone. Harry isn't choosing sides between family and freedom. He's caught between two competing validation systems, both promising to fill a void that existed before either system noticed him. The truth-telling isn't about truth. Psychologists recognize it as repetition compulsion, the need to recreate traumatic situations, hoping for different outcomes. Every interview, every revelation, every podcast is Harry replaying the same scene, the moment he couldn't save his mother. Now he's trying to save himself using the same failed strategy. Public confession as private therapy never works. It just traumatizes the audience too. Here's the cruelest irony. The very privilege that should protect him accelerates his destruction. Ordinary people hit rock bottom and rebuild. But when you're worth millions with global platforms, rock bottom becomes a concept, not reality. There's always another interview, another book deal, another opportunity to mistake attention for healing. Wealth becomes an enabler of perpetual crisis. The comparison to historical figures misses the point. This isn't about fallen princes or royal precedent. This is about modern psychology meeting ancient institutions. Harry's collapse is what happens when 21st century trauma responses collide with 11th century expectations. He's not the first spare to struggle. He's the first to struggle with Netflix cameras rolling. The universal truth here isn't about royalty or celebrity. It's about what happens when we mistake movement for progress. Harry left Britain but took Britain with him internally. He married for love, but brought his loneliness into the marriage. He sought freedom, but built a new prison with better weather. Geographic solutions to psychological problems always fail because you pack yourself in every suitcase. What we're really watching is the limitation of external solutions to internal problems. All the money, platforms, and sympathetic interviews can't fix what's broken inside. Harry's story isn't cautionary because he's royal. It's cautionary because he's human, showing us what happens when we run from ourselves while calling it running toward something better. The experts agree he's destroying himself. What they miss is that he's been destroyed since childhood, just highly functional about it until now. The breakdown isn't new. The public visibility is. We're not watching a prince fall. We're watching a wounded child in a middle-aged body finally stop pretending everything's fine. That's not tragedy. That's what happens when therapy becomes performance art and healing becomes content creation. The question isn't whether Harry can be saved. It's whether he wants saving or whether the performance of drowning has become more comfortable than the effort of swimming. When victimhood becomes identity, recovery threatens existence itself. That's the trap Harry's in, not royal protocols or media persecution. The trap of making pain your personality, then wondering why happiness feels like betrayal. This isn't about taking sides between Harry and his family. It's about recognizing that self-destruction doesn't need villains. Sometimes we're protagonist and antagonist simultaneously. Harry's fighting a civil war where he's both sides. Until he recognizes that, every victory will be a defeat and every escape will lead back to the same prison, himself. The real question isn't what Harry will do next. It's whether we're watching destruction or transformation. Sometimes they look identical until years later. But one thing remains certain. The war hero who couldn't win the war against himself might be the most honest thing about this entire saga. Not because he's telling the truth, but because he's showing us what it looks like when the battle you're fighting is with your own reflection.